Thank you all for coming to worship on Palm Passion Sunday. And again, this is the service where we try to figure out and experience how we get from shouting Hosanna, waving our palms, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord on Palm Sunday, to crying out for Jesus' crucifixion 5 days later on Good Friday. And perhaps the place to begin with is this feeling of desperation. If I were to ask you this morning, what does it mean to be desperate? What would you say? What would you say if I asked somebody, yeah.
You really want something?
You really want something. Okay? Anybody else? Any other ideas? And that's a great answer, Maddox. I'm just curious to see what anybody else thinks. You would go to any lengths. What would you do for it? You'd do anything.
Seeing no other choice.
Seeing no other choice, no other way. These are all pretty good answers. I just, like I said, I always want to see what you guys come up with. Desperate people tend to believe that their very existence is at stake. Desperate people are often willing to do things that they wouldn't normally do. The people along the road on Palm Sunday were desperate. The crowd shouting at Jesus' trial before Pilate were desperate. The people of Israel were desperate. They were living under the cruel physical and economic oppression of Rome. People struggled to feed their families, and the average life expectancy of most people was only about 40 years. Suddenly a stranger arrives in Jerusalem on the highest, holiest holiday of the year, Passover. Will this be the king? Will this be the one promised by God to deliver them from these hated Romans? And so people flock to Jesus, these desperate people, putting all their hopes in him to save them, and they march and they shout praises and they give him the red carpet welcome with palm branches and the very clothes off their back. At this moment, Jesus is immensely popular and has all the public opinion going his way. And then what happens in our story? What's the very next thing that Jesus does? You're allowed to cheat in your lessons. He flips the tables over in the temple. He disrupts the worship service in the temple. It's the holiest of holies. That's the Jewish national bank. That's their source of identity and pride for an already desperate and downtrodden people. No, Jesus, you're supposed to go after those other guys. You're supposed to go after the Romans. Instead, Jesus confronts and challenges his own people's deepest held beliefs about their national and religious identities. Jesus doesn't confront the Romans. He goes after his own leaders. He doesn't trash a Roman temple. He goes after his own faith. Why isn't Jesus doing what we want him to do? Why doesn't Jesus do what I want him to do? It seems altogether appropriate that we hear this tension explode during Holy Week as we see marches and counter-marches, speeches and rebuttals, snarky posts on social media and toxic comments about those posts, tearing apart our own social fabric in our nation. And I can see the desperation. I can feel the desperation around us. Can you? People without good jobs and without a livable wage, desperate to find one. People who do have a good job with a little money in the bank are desperate to keep them. People are desperate to cling to their liberal beliefs. People are desperate to hang on to their conservative beliefs. People are desperate for safety and security. People are desperate for health and wellness. And we remember that desperate people who believe their very way of life, their core values are at stake, desperate people are willing to do and say things that they wouldn't normally. What kind of Messiah do we want? Do we want to follow a Jesus who will comfort and conform to the way we want the world to be? Who is following who? Perhaps this is how we get from hailing Jesus as our Savior on Sunday and calling for his death on Friday. He doesn't do what we want. He doesn't do it how we want him to do it. He doesn't live up to our expectations. And to the question of what kind of Messiah will Jesus be? Well, at least for that we get good news. We get the gospel. We get the kind of Messiah who will die for us even when, especially when we don't deserve it. Jesus dies rejected and rises again to let us know what God wants for each of us. There is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. We can deny God, we can betray God, we can abandon God with our words and our actions, and yet Jesus will keep coming back no matter what, telling us to turn from our former wicked ways and that there is a better way before us, a better way of living, a better way of being. Another way of living is possible. Another way of living is already here. We are no longer bound to public opinion polls, but rather focused on whether or not something is Christ-like or Christ-centered. Does the action or policy or statement that we desire reflect Christ's commitment to nonviolence, as shown by his entrance into Jerusalem? Does it conform to Jesus' example of selfless service as he washes his disciples' feet at the Last Supper? Does it exemplify our Lord's commitment to redemption and forgiveness, embodied by Jesus' arrival on Easter morning and the first people that he wants to see? The disciples, the very people that left him, that abandoned him, that denied him. These are the things that Jesus and God are desperate for in our lives. And you, the people of St. Peter's Lutheran, are trying to live into this cross-shaped vision of love, justice, and mercy. During Lent, you helped make and sell Easter eggs to fund our middle school and high school mission trip to West Virginia this summer. So far, you guys have raised $2,000. It's almost 10 kids. At the same time, you gave to a project for refugee women in Jordan so that they can make soap and generate income and hope for their families. All of this, in addition to the countless ways you already serve, you already give and share in your daily lives, in your jobs, and here at church. Another world is possible. Another world is already here. It arrived with an empty tomb on Easter morning. And so my invitation to you all is, let us live desperate. Desperate to share Christ's love. Desperate to share Christ's mercy. Desperate to share Christ's justice with our family, with our friends, with our neighbors, and our world. When we say the words, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Amen.